not a sermon. It is some biblical insight. We're going to talk about some secular illustrations, some Bible examples, and the goal here is to help us to understand and maybe in a greater way appreciate the work that God has called Breck Conley to fulfill. And I'm going to be reading a few verses out of Luke chapter 8. Luke chapter 8. If you forgot your Bible, there's a red pew Bible in front of you. In the red pew Bible, we're on page 725. 725. That's where you will find Luke chapter 8. We're going to read verses 8, maybe verse 4, and it'll be pretty much self-explanatory, but I want to point out when we're done reading it some details. At first I thought they were minor details. After I meditated upon it, they were rather significant details. Jesus is on a missionary tour along with his 12. It says in verse 1, "Now it came to pass afterward that he went through every city and village, preaching and bringing the glad tidings of the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him." And focus on verse 2 with me. "And certain women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom he had come 7 demons, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others who provided for him from their own substance." Key women operating in the background, behind the scenes, people, and nobody knew their names except Jesus and the 12 and a remote few others. But in verse 4, when he goes before the great multitude, keep in mind that it's these women. It is Mary Magdalene. It is Joanna. It is Susanna who gave of their own substance to make this excursion possible. These are the unseen heroes. They work unnoticed behind the scenes. Without them, there could be no frontline missionary work. Jesus couldn't do it effectively without them. The 12 couldn't be as effective without them. These are the women who make frontline ministry possible. And before we hear from Breck, I want to talk about some heroes behind the scenes. And maybe you've thought about this, maybe you haven't. Every week we pray for people who get sick. When a person gets sick enough to need medical attention, they see the doctor. The doctor will almost always order up a blood test. The reason for that is the blood provides essential information on the function of the major organs as well as some key glands. In certain situations, the doctor may order up some imaging. He may order up an X-ray. He may order up an ultrasound, an MRI, a CAT scan. The doctor needs all of this information so he can diagnose and successfully treat the patient to bring that patient ultimately back into good health. When that happens, it is mission accomplished, and the doctor becomes the hero. But without the lab people, without the imaging people, without the tech people who fix highly sensitive imaging and lab equipment, that doctor would be flying blind. He wouldn't get the full picture. And his best guess Without these behind-the-scenes people, it would be like throwing darts at a dartboard blindfolded. Maybe he'd get lucky and make the right call. May I suggest to you that when you go to your doctor, the real heroes are people you've never seen. You don't know their name, but they are busy in the lab. They are busy in the imaging department. Now, all of this is expensive, but what is the monetary value of good health? We have people in our church who are military people. Consider a frontline combat soldier and what that soldier needs to accomplish a successful mission. I read that the ratio of military personnel to a frontline combat soldier, well, that can vary depending upon the specific mission and the branch of the military and the level of support that's required. But generally speaking, in round numbers, it's estimated that for every one combat soldier on the front line, that there can be anywhere from 5 to 8 support personnel behind that soldier. And they provide the logistics. They provide the intelligence. They work with the communications. There are trucks that make their way to the front line. They bring fresh water. They bring food. They bring fuel. They resupply ammunition. There are technical people such as field surgeons in case something goes wrong. There are technical people that run computerized equipment. There are mechanics that fix things when they get blown up or break down. There are other essential people behind the line. May I suggest that the men and women who work behind the scenes are heroes as well. That ratio ensures that the combat soldier on the front line can be effectively supported and equipped to carry out their mission successfully. Now, all of that is very expensive, and it costs a lot of money. But what is the monetary value of freedom? Who can put a price tag on it? At the onslaught of COVID, Satan used governments around the world to shut down churches for an excessive and extended period of time. The church was unprepared. Surveys tell us that before COVID, here in America, only 10 to 15% of our churches, and there's about, nobody really knows because some close and some open every month of the year, anywhere like right around 700,000 churches. Out of 700,000 churches, only 10 to 15% of them were live streaming their church services before the COVID shutdown. The church was caught flat-footed, and for the most part, it was dragged, kicking and screaming, into the age of tech. Today, there are approximately 78% of our churches here in America live stream their services. I suspect that the 22% that do not broadcast a live stream are either closed-minded to the idea and concept, or perhaps they can't afford the pricey technical equipment and software that make that possible. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Surveys tell us that 82% of young adults between the ages of 18 and 34 have engaged with church content online at least once a month. 55% of church members prefer watching sermons online over attending regularly in person. You know, for the infirmed, the physically ill, and those who have to work on Sunday, this is a good thing. But I suspect that Jesus would prefer that those 55% attend churches in person. 85% of the churches with online services agree that digital outreach is essential to modern ministry. Today, everybody has their favorite live stream preacher. What you don't see are the people that make that happen. There are the inventors of the technical equipment. There are people who work to improve the function and the quality of this technical equipment. There are gifted tech people who install this equipment and software. In churches like ours, it takes a small team of people inside the local church who know how to turn the right knobs, how to push the right buttons, how to manipulate the right computer software to make a live stream possible. But all you see if you watch live stream is the front man, such as me. The real heroes work behind the scene to make it all possible. And because of them, and I'm just one person, it's true of probably 500,000 churches here in the United States. Today or later on this evening or this week, believe it or not, I'm going to be viewed by somebody in the Philippines, somebody in Myanmar, at least 3, I think 4 African countries, Sweden, Norway, England, Brazil, Ecuador, Mexico, Canada, and about 7 different states here in America. Now, it was expensive to set all of this up and get it running, but what is the monetary value of an eternal soul? How much is an eternal soul worth? Throughout the Bible, ministry has never been a one-person effort. There was always a team of people, a cluster of people, a congregation of people who worked behind the scenes. Jesus, though he was fully divine, chose to surround himself with people who helped behind the scenes. Women especially. It was Christianity, by the way, that elevated the worth and value of women in the world. Some people like to argue with that. That's just a fact that can't be argued. But women play a crucial role as ministry helpers in the life of Christ. We read Luke chapter 8, names like Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Susanna. Luke chapter 10 mentions a couple of women. They were sisters, Mary and Martha. All of these women opened up their purses. They supported Jesus and the disciples out of their own means. Now, you may remember at one point there were a bunch of disciples that it seems to imply that Jesus was training, because at some point in his earthly ministry he broke these 70 down into 35 different groups and sent them out 2 by 2. And they became front men, but I'll guarantee you there was a conglomerate of people that supported them. Somebody to do laundry, somebody to mend clothes, somebody to prepare meals, somebody to offer Hospitality, somebody to offer emotional support, demonstrating that ministry helpers come from all walks of life. The book of Acts and the epistles in the New Testament are filled with references to ministry helpers who were vital in spreading the gospel. In Acts chapter 6, we read about 7 men, Stephen, Philip, 5 others who were chosen to be deacons. They would distribute daily to the widows, freeing the apostles to focus on prayer and teaching the words of Christ in the Bible. Paul's letters frequently mention helpers like Timothy, Titus, Silas, Priscilla, Aquila, Epaphroditus, and many others that traveled with Paul in these missionary church planting excursions. He refers to them in his writings as fellow laborers. He refers to them as servants of Jesus Christ, emphasizing their indispensable role as they most often worked unnoticed behind the scenes. Lydia was a successful businesswoman. She was a devoted worshiper of the Lord. She opened her home to the Apostle Paul and his companions. Her hospitality provided a safe haven for the early missionaries by providing lodging, food, a warm place to sleep. Lydia enabled Paul and his team to continue their missionary work without financial strain. Her home became a meeting place for worship services. She fostered a sense of community and a shared purpose. As a successful businesswoman, Lydia's resources helped sustain the growing Christian community. In Acts, we read about a woman, her name is Phoebe. She appears in the New Testament as a prominent figure in early Christianity. Her name is mentioned in Romans chapter 16, verses 1 and 2. There she holds a title, deaconess, in the church at Cenchrea. Paul tells us that it was Phoebe who delivered his letter, his epistle, to the church at Rome. That book of Romans we have in our Bible, Phoebe hand-delivered that. She was trusted in a role in these missionary activities. Her position suggests that she, as a deaconess, that she managed practical tasks. So the disciples, Paul and others, well, they wouldn't be encumbered. They would be free to focus on the preaching and teaching. And then there are ministries like SonSet Solutions who help Christian, Bible-believing, doctrinally sound Christian missionaries, primarily in third world countries. They help them reach out to their communities and their neighborhoods and their cities with the message that Jesus saves. Many of them depend on technology. Technology is an amplifier. If you have technology, you can be at more than one place at one time. They depend upon technology, but they may not have their own technical engineer. They may not have their own IT specialist or troubleshooting technician. Every year, SonSet Solutions stand in the gap for more than 100 different ministries spread across the globe in dozens of mostly third world countries, helping to monitor wells for clean drinking water, setting up radio stations for broadcasting, providing radio receivers to hear the message, video technology, solar energy where there is no electrical grid, and ICT support at the local level. All of this to help over 100 different missionaries that have their front men missionary, but the real heroes, are the tech people headquartered in Elkhart, Indiana, who work unnoticed behind the scene to make frontline missionary work more effective. It's expensive to get all of this up and going. It takes a king's ransom to pull that rabbit out of the hat. But then again, what is the monetary value of an eternal soul? The biblical model of ministry helpers, unnamed, unnoticed, behind the scenes, well, that still happens today in the local church. Often they are the real heroes because their labor behind the scene makes frontline ministry possible. May God bless the unseen, unnoticed heroes who provide tech for our frontline missionaries. It's an honor, a joy, and a privilege to have Breck Conley with us. I consider her homegrown. I don't know if you realize it or not, but this young woman spent almost half of her life in this church. I baptized her in that pool behind the curtain back there. So she holds a special place in our heart. Why don't we give her a hero's welcome as she comes and shares her ministry with us. Now we're going to be showing slides, so I'm going to move this pulpit out of the way. I have a music stand I can give you. On. I command you.
All right, I just want to, okay, this thing is on. It's turning on. Okay. So, as Pastor Koshier introduced, my name is Breck Conley. I am a missionary with an organization called SonSet Solutions. He explained it really well. We're a ministry that focuses on helping other missionaries and ministries around the world use technology to make their gospel work more efficient. Currently, we have three primary areas, the first being radio broadcast. That's how we started. So we go out and help set up radio stations and provide little solar-powered radio receivers to ministry workers around the world. We have our community development team that focuses on clean water and providing that well monitoring services. That way, in case something goes wrong, the missionaries and ministries are able to go and fix that before the well dries up and the people group moves on. And then our solar team, or Power Solutions team, helps with that solar power and the equipment for churches around the world that don't have the electricity grid be able to have electricity where it's needed. I personally have worked at SonSet for the past year as a part of their Discover program, which is a one-year apprenticeship program, sort of, where I'm able to go in, work with SonSet for, your normal 40 hours a week and see, is this really where God is calling you? And how is this going to work? What is your role at SonSet? While I was there in that 1 year, I felt the call to continue on with SonSet in a long-term capacity. And I am currently in a stage of my life where I am support raising to go back there. As Pastor Koshier mentioned earlier, I am 40% of the way there, and I've been support raising for a little over a month and a half. So praying that the Lord will lead me back to SonSet before the end of the year so I can start the working year working with SonSet again. So a little bit about me personally. I did grow up in this church. I spent 8 years of my life here from 2012 to 2020. I was saved when I was 12 at a VBS, not here actually, but at another church in the area. But I was baptized here by Pastor Koshier a couple months later. In 2020, God moved my family to New Hampshire, where I was able to be a part of a youth group that really helped stir up my desire to serve the Lord in everything that I do. I was a part of the worship team there, and I also was a part of the tech team that ran slides and audio. And it really gave me a desire to serve the Lord with the everyday tasks that I did. While I was there in New Hampshire, I was doing a dual enrollment program. So I was doing, in my last 2 years of high school, I did a college program. So I graduated with an associate's degree in information systems. And when I was getting close to graduating, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with that degree. How was I going to start in the IT world? And I attended a missions-focused Sunday at my church where the director of a missions board called IBM Global spoke. And he really instilled in us the fact that everyone has skills that can be used for the kingdom in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter if you are a good speaker or someone who has a calling to travel the world and be a missionary. You can be a tradesman or in IT or an accountant or something like that where you don't think of it initially as being a part of missions, but every single person's skills and gifts is an arm for the kingdom. And he had specifically mentioned IT, and that really stuck with me. And I almost did an internship with IBM Global the summer after I graduated, but God had other plans. My family moved to Ohio. We live about an hour north of Columbus right now, and started attending a church down there. I started working at a IT company that provided services for about 50 different small to medium-sized businesses, mostly up in the New England area, but I worked from home in Ohio. While I was at that church and in that job, I attended a missions conference that my sending church put on, Delaware Bible Church out in Delaware, Ohio. They put on a missions conference, and 2 missionaries from SonSet Solutions came and spoke. Their names were John and Jean Anderson. And if you actually saw the slide that was in the rotation, the 2 missionaries that were sitting beside me at that career fair in that photo, those are the 2 missionaries that God used to call me to SonSet. I remember sitting, and they were giving a Q&A panel, and the youth pastor, who was the moderator for that panel, asked them the question, what is the biggest need in your ministry outside of finances? And I remember Jean said very clearly, office and administrative workers. And right then is where God took that desire to serve in missions and told me where I was going to do it. So I went up and I talked to them in between services, and I asked them, do you need help in IT? That's where God gifted me, and I have a desire to serve. And they said yes. Their current IT, the current guy in IT, who was my supervisor this past year, is semi-retired, and he's working part-time. And that's barely enough to cover when things are going wrong and keep on top of basic maintenance when it comes to IT, just for the office, much less being able to help other ministries with the skills that we have. So I in April 2023, took my first trip to SonSet, realized, I think this is where God's calling me. I'm not sure when, but because at the time I was 17 and I couldn't start with them yet. But in October of 2023, I had turned 18. It was almost 2 years ago. In 2 weeks, it'll be 2 years ago, where God gave me the call to reach out to John again, and that started the process of joining SonSet for their one-year Discover program. I started support raising in April of 2024, and then joined SonSet on June 24th of 2024. So I got to move over to Elkhart, Indiana, and serve at SonSet. As part of the Discover program, I was able to move in with a board member. This is the house that I got to stay in. I am very blessed for the people that housed me and provided for me food and utilities and all of that. I got to take my cat with me, which was another huge blessing. So I had the weekend before, I moved out on June 23rd and started working with SonSet on June 24th. So I had a day to kind of get settled in and have Junior get settled in. I'll focus on the life before I focus on the ministry, and just because part of my calling back to Indiana and back to SonSet is also the life that God has called me out to in there. Part of that involves my church that I am a part of out there. I attend a church called First Baptist of Goshen, Indiana. I'm able to serve there. I actually, within the first couple weeks of being out in that church, I got the opportunity to walk with them in their outreach that they do at the Elkhart County 4-H Fair, part of the puppet bus. So that bus right there, I'm one of those puppets up there. This is the group that we walked with. But it was amazing, and it really, God showed me that that's the church that he had planned out for me. I was able to jump in and join the worship team and join the tech team. We also live stream, and we have a production team that puts that on. And I'm a part of the team that does the cameras for that. I also found a young adult group that I'm able to share my life with out in Elkhart through another church called Zion Missionary Church. This group of people is genuinely an answer to prayer that I never believed that I could have. I've been praying for that stereotypical college friend group for since I was 16 or something like that. And over the last year, this group of people, we gather every Wednesday to study the Word together. We've been actually going through the Psalms one by one, reading them together, categorizing them, and talking about the historical context and what we can learn from it. These photos are from a thing we do called Dinner with Real Adults, where we gather with someone else at Zion and hear their testimony and something the Lord's been teaching them. And those people have been an absolute blessing in my life. So besides the life, the important thing, the ministry, the work that I'm doing. I started at SonSet last summer, halfway through the internships. This photo up here is all the interns from last year. We got some amazing time of fellowship with them on top of the work that we were doing. And this was something that interns put together, a little song about SonSet. Unfortunately, I don't have any recordings of that, so I would have shown you otherwise. But it was amazing to be able to join halfway through the internship process. Again, God gave me that community that he knew I would need right after I moved there. We had the opportunity to spend time building relationships with them at the county fair. Got to attend my first rodeo within a month of moving out to Indiana. It was pretty exciting. I also have settled into my own work at the office. One of the first projects that I've done was cleaning up our IT closet, because we get so many donations. As a ministry, a lot of people are like, oh, we have this technology that we don't use anymore. Could you guys use it? And when you have a couple decades worth of that without cleaning up the IT closet regularly, it gets to be a little bit of a mess. So I took this photo. I realized I should have taken a before and after before I started cleaning, but that's about halfway through the cleaning process is the before. And it doesn't look too different from a distance, but let me tell you, it was so nice to be able to walk in there and be able to get to everything that we needed easily and quickly. That was the first project that I was turned loose on. I also got to run network cables in some of the renovated office areas. We renovated the west end of our office right as I was coming in, and new office spaces meant that we needed to run network cabling through the walls and to have access points on the different side of the office spaces. So I was involved in running that network wire and getting those ports set up and connected. That's a photo of me doing that right there. That was so exciting, and I'm very grateful that I got to be a part of that. I also helped upgrade about between a third to a half of the computers in the office, if I remember correctly. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but Windows 10, that operating system, stops receiving security updates in October. I think it's the middle of October. And most of our office was running Windows 10, and you can't have, in an office environment, computers that are running out-of-date software that, really isn't secure. They're not receiving security updates anymore. So we had to replace so many computers in our office, and I was turned loose on that project. I would tell my supervisor what computers I needed and when, and I was responsible for making sure those computers got upgraded, and the staff members were able to switch over as smoothly as possible. I think when I left, there were only about 5 or so computers left to upgrade for the entire office, both computers that were used daily and computers that had specific purposes. I also got to go to the career fair at Wheaton College with John and Jean Anderson, like I said, the missionaries that called me, or that God used to call me to SonSet. I got to share with college students and recent graduates about some of the internship and Discover program opportunities that SonSet had available for once they were either graduated or wanting a summer internship. That was a blessing of being able to go and share the ministry in another context. I also, SonSet has many ministry partners that we work with overseas and around the world. About 53 different countries is the last total that I remember. And we like to send our full-time staff on at least one trip a year to go and support and come alongside these ministries, whether it's installing equipment, supporting them in handing out radios, or just generally coming alongside them in the work that they're doing. We like to send our missionaries along with to help out, and I got the opportunity to go to help one of our ministries called Kijani Farm in Kenya. Kijani Farm, one of our ministry partners, they're a gospel-centered community development ministry in southern Kenya. Their mission is to inspire hope and create opportunity for the Maasai communities. The Maasai community is one of the poorest in Kenya. They're one of the most looked down upon tribes because they have a stereotype of being a nomadic warrior tribe. I went with a team of 6 from SonSet, so it was me, John and Jean again. God's really used John and Jean in my life this past year. I did not realize until I was putting together this presentation just how much they were involved in while I was there. Mike, who is the Power Solutions team lead, and his wife Rachel, and then Ethan, who is also part of the Discover program. So he came in April, and I liked to joke, Ethan and I were both getting our overseas trip as part of our Discover program at the same time, except for this was literally the last 2 weeks of my Discover program. My 1 year with SonSet ended the day we got back to the States. Ethan just got here in April, so I got it at the end, he got it at the beginning, but it was pretty awesome either way. Great team of people, and I'm so grateful that I got to go down with them. We had a few objectives. First of all, was to expand their Starlink internet coverage. They have a property down there in the Maasai land that currently has 4 buildings. They have their main building in the center where the founders live, Brian and Heather Delamater. They live there with their daughter Charlie, and then they have an office space and a workshop in the bottom floor of that building. They have the first house that they lived in, which they also use as a guest house for when people come to help out in their ministry. The Hodi house, which is the house for 2 other missionaries that work there at Kijani, and then they call it the Community Water Project, which functions as a K-3 school. It's a tap for clean water, and then there's a kitchen right there that some staff at Kajani put together lunch for every working day and cook up chai for tea time and porridge for the kids while they're at school. And they needed internet access on all 4 of those buildings, and they only had it in the center. And so they reached out to us, and they're like, hey, can you help with this? And that's what I was able to do. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We also were going to build a home for one of the Maasai widows and install one of our solar ministry toolkits. So this is a little system where we have the solar panel up on the roof, you bring it down, it's got everything you need. I'm not an electrical engineer, I'm not familiar with the solar power at all. All I know is you have everything you need to use that power in this little box. Then you can plug lights into that, which we did, and then we also plugged a phone charger into that for her. That's the device that we also can use in churches to set up audiovisual systems and a projector and a microphone and sound system. We also were delivering medications like Tylenol and burn cream and pregnancy vitamins to this community. One of the members of our team, Jean, is a former nurse, so we were providing basic health checkups and she was providing basic health checkups and presentations on a couple different topics. Jean and Rachel had the opportunity to provide assistance to the school, helping alleviate the teachers' work a little bit by reading to the kids and helping out in some of their classwork. And for SonSet as a ministry to just gain a deeper understanding of Kajani Farm and what their needs were, specifically relating to technology and how we can help them more in the future, even past this project. It's giving me issues. I see.
Yeah, manually advance it, please.
Yeah, if you could go ahead and advance it. Or is PowerPoint being frustrating? So I guess I'll talk a little bit more about, I think that's what the next slide is about Starlink. So the Starlink project, that is a project that I was able to kind of spearhead, I guess I would say. Kajani came to us seeking assistance for getting this Wi-Fi access across their property. And they knew we were a technology ministry, and they asked us, hey, do you know anything about this? Would you be able to help with this, getting Wi-Fi access on our campus? The founders here, Brian and Heather Delamater, they're the ones that approached us about this. Okay, I'll back up from the Starlink because I know I have more slides. The founders are the ones that approached me for this, or approached SonSet for this. Brian and Heather Delamater are pictured there. They work with the Maasai people, like I've said earlier. I have some photos here of the prep work for our trip, including putting together, we had 2 or 3 churches donate medication for us to take with us. So that's us sorting it out and putting it into our different suitcases, because we had to split it up and not have all that medication in one suitcase. However, despite our best efforts, we still got held up by customs in Nairobi because, when you bring big bottles of Tylenol, customs kind of flags that a little bit. But we did manage to get through and did manage to bring the medication with us. We stayed the night in Nairobi, drove down 2.5 hours to Kajani Farm. We spent some time with the founder, Brian, there, and with some of the staff at Kajani, just planning out what this week would look like. We were there for 7 days in the country of Kenya. Like I said, my main focus was extending the Starlink internet to the main areas of Kajani Farm. They came to us, asked if we could help. I was able to build up a network using Ubiquity devices to take the Starlink that they had in their central building and mount units to the 4 buildings to extend this coverage across the campus, similarly to how if you would walk around a college and connect to the internet on your phone, you still have that same internet connection regardless of where you're walking on campus. I was setting up that same thing here on Kajani Farm. This involved installing transmitters. Thankfully, the guys on the team were willing to climb up on roofs and in attics, because that was not a job that I was mentally prepared for when I got there. So it involved installing transmitters, pointing the antenna, because they had to connect to each other, installing some access points there in each of the buildings, installing power over Ethernet adapters so that we could power these devices, and getting all the connections wired up. And this is able to impact so many areas of their ministry. Their medical, educational, spiritual aspects of their ministry. They're able to pull up resources if it's needed. The livelihood of some of the people in the community, they're able to come in and use the Wi-Fi, as well as helping with some of the cultural barriers there, helping some of the people in the community have the opportunity to have entrepreneurship, and then just meeting some of the staff's daily needs within the office, and Brian and Heather keeping their ministry partners up to date on what's happening at Kajani. Our other project was to build a home for one of the widows in the Maasai community and install a solar ministry toolkit. This house right here is a house that one of the widows was living in. This house had holes big enough for a goat to walk directly into the house. So Brian and Heather knew that they needed to help her out. This widow's name is Maria, and they already had been working with their team to make sure that the materials were ready and that the house was almost ready for us to install the toolkit once we got there. But when we got to the property, we were able to help with the cutting and nailing of materials and getting that house finished. The widow there, next to the girl in the pink hoodie, her name is Maria. She's the one we were building the house for. We installed the solar ministry toolkit in her house. You can see that off to the right of Maria. Again, this provided lights in her house and a phone charger, which allows for, they called it hustle when we were talking to Brian and Heather, because she's able to invite people in and charge them to charge their phones, and it provides a little bit of needed income for a widow in the community like that, since her husband isn't there to provide and she did not have any sons. We also were able to get plugged into their relational ministry down there in Kenya. Every Sunday, or not every Sunday, every day, we would pause at 10 a.m. to have chai with the Maasai people and just have interactions with the people that came to the farm, the children, the teachers, some of the staff members there, and get to know their story and how Kajani has impacted their lives and the lives of their community. And then the ladies were able to be a part of the group that went around and connected with people in the other people in the community. So this was not on this photo was not taken on the property of Kajani. This was about a 10-minute drive out in the bush. But we were just spent some time connecting, hearing how Kajani has worked in their lives, and how God's been using that ministry there to both support that community and also bring people closer to God. These are some kids from the schools. There are 5 schools, I believe, that Kajani is a part of running. They provide food and then K through 3 education. On one of our visits to a school, we found out that Ethan is a great juggler, and the kids were absolutely enthralled by that. It was an amazing time, and I'm so grateful for everything that I was able to be a part of while I was down in Kenya, both installing the Wi-Fi network, but also just connecting with the people down there in Kenya and hearing how God's working in their lives. In my full-time ministry, will be part of a new direction for the IT team at SonSet Solutions. This project at Kajani was hopefully the first of many. Currently, our IT team is focused specifically internally on the office in Elkhart, Indiana. We want that to be extended out to our ministry partners and missionaries that we work with. So many of them have IT needs that they need consulting for or help for, like they did not have the knowledge of how to set up a Wi-Fi network. I did, and I was able to go and help them with that project that they needed done. We plan to offer this kind of IT consulting to other ministry partners around the world, and the work is made possible by growing the size of our full-time IT staff. I will be a part of that. There is also someone, if I remember correctly, who is going to be joining our IT team soon, within the next year, Lord willing, that the two of us will be instrumental in this shift towards externally facing and partner facing IT. Like I said, I'll have the opportunity to be part of spearheading this new direction, and that opportunity is something that God has used to call me into full-time service with SonSet Solutions. Specifically working with those ministry partners around the world is 100% what God has made me for and called me to. I've had a desire to do IT consulting for ministries since I was 15. And I didn't know how that was going to work. I thought I would be doing an IT company or something like that. But no, I get to be a missionary and do it. And I feel like that's even better. So what are the plans for the future with that? I've already applied for full-time service with SonSet Solutions full-time, and I have very clearly been accepted. I did have some conflicts about staying long-term. I had a relationship that I was a part of when I first joined SonSet, but that fell apart. God wasn't calling him to Indiana. God wasn't calling me to Virginia. So that never went anywhere, and when the relationship ended, that was the push to seek full-time service at SonSet. I also had some health issues while I was there, and car issues. The whole plethora of issues happened over the couple months between really October to January last year. But God brought me through it and sustained me through it, and has really shown me that He will provide for me as long as I am where He's calling me to. The doors to anywhere else closed. I am 100% called to SonSet Solutions and called to Indiana, and I am really excited to get back. What does that look like? First step, support raising. I'm currently support raising in order to join SonSet in a full-time capacity, and I plan on being with SonSet as long as the Lord allows. Currently, I'm in that process of support raising. I've said before, I'm at 40%. I'm trying to get there by the end of this year so that I can join SonSet at the first working day of the year. And I'm excited for the ways that God's already been provided for me, and I will be at SonSet as long as the Lord has me there. And I also am excited for the future growth of the IT team and how this new aspect of our ministry is going to be able to impact our ministry partners around the world. I'm excited to work directly with them, and then also continue in my role in the in-office IT support at Elkhart, or in Elkhart, Indiana as well. Yes. Thank you.